Good morning. Welcome to Who's Left This Week, the unapologetically progressive Sunday morning political news show for Indiana. Our opening theme song is by Hoosier singer-songwriter Leslie Nuss, and my name is Scott Aaron Rogers. I am broadcasting from Bloomington. This week, Indiana found itself at the center of the political universe, with our primary election taking place Tuesday. Massive news to discuss there, which we'll do at the top of the second hour. First, updates on the Iran war, President Trump remaking the nation's capital and the government in his own authoritarian image, plus the continued fallout from last week's major Supreme Court decision gutting the landmark 1965 Voting Rights Act. I've got a couple top-notch guests to join me in talking about all of that and more, but before we begin, you know the drill. This is an independent media project. We don't paywall content. We certainly don't have any billionaire benefactors. Only individuals like you keep this thing going. It is a foundational principle of Who's Left and the Progressive Indiana Network that we refuse to hide important information behind paywalls in the middle of a political crisis, even if that's not in our financial best interest. So please, if you find value in this work, go to progressiveindiana.net and subscribe at the paid level. It's only $5 a month or $50 a year to help us build the infrastructure that will pop the right-wing media bubble in this state. If a paid subscription isn't in the cards for you right now, that's okay. You can still help out by liking and sharing on social media, commenting, leaving reviews, providing feedback, forwarding our content to your people. You get us when you can. Mostly, we just want you here in this community of Hoosiers dedicated to making the state and its government work for all of us, not just the elite few. Please join us. Follow me on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Progressive Indiana Network's handle is the full spelled out name on most sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it's PIN Indiana. Please help us grow with a follow wherever you're at. Now, let us welcome this week's guests. First, the executive director at one of Indiana's most vital nonprofit organizations, promoting civic engagement through education, outreach, and advocacy from mad voters. It's Amy Courtney. Amy, welcome back to Who's Left. Appreciate you being here this morning.
Glad to be here. This will be fun. Lots to talk about.
Lots to talk about. Last time we had you here, we only got you for half the show. I'm glad to have you for the full thing this time. Thank you so much for spending part of your Sunday morning here with us. Let us welcome our second guest now, a first-timer here in the Who's Left multiverse, as it were. He's been reporting the news in Howard County since way back in 1989 and is currently the publisher of the independent Kokomo Lantern. It's Patrick Munsey. Patrick, welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Welcome. Glad to have you here. Number one, just thank you for the vital work you're doing there in Kokomo. We were talking about this a little bit before we went live. Local journalism is a sort of dying business, sadly, right now. Yet it is more important than ever. So before we even begin, how can the folks support you there at the Kokomo Lantern?
Certainly. I'm a daily news source online. You can catch me on Facebook at Kokomo Lantern. I've got a page and a group because I don't know how to work Facebook. And I also have a Substack, kokomolantern.substack.com, and my own independent website, kokomolantern.com.
Very good. So let's go ahead and dig in. We've got a lot to talk about this week. Like I said, Indiana was very much at the center of the, at least the American political universe this week. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about that in the second half of the show. But let's start with a couple of quick hits before we really dig into our national stories. And first, a Dutch-flagged cruise ship, the MV Hondius, is docked off the coast of the Canary Islands with passengers set to disembark and enter quarantine today after an outbreak of Hantavirus on the vessel. A Dutch couple are dead after likely contracting the virus before boarding in Argentina. A German passenger is also deceased. The Andes strain of the virus, which is primarily transmitted to humans by breathing particles from the droppings of infected rodents, is the only hantavirus known to spread human to human and can have a fatality rate as high as 50%. 6 U.S. states are monitoring American passengers who had previously debarked. The WHO, thankfully, currently assesses the risk to the global population from this event as low. Speaking of sick rats, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick this week testified before the House Oversight Committee regarding his relationship with the late pedophile and sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein, the same day a purported suicide note, allegedly from Epstein's first unsuccessful attempt, was unsealed by a district court judge. 3 additional sealed documents related to the note are expected next week, and former Attorney General Pam Bondi is scheduled to testify to the Oversight Committee next month. And while Trump's DOJ is still illegally sitting on millions of pages of the Epstein files, here's a distraction. It's the X-Files. The Defense Department this week releasing 160 plus declassified records relating to unidentified anomalous phenomena, popularly known as UFOs. The files span from a 1948 top-secret Air Force report of unidentified objects over Europe to a 2023 sighting of a metallic ovaloid object that vanished after 5 to 10 seconds. Trump posted on Truth Social, quote, "The people can decide for themselves what the hell is going on. Have fun and enjoy." I guess let's start. Amy, are you worried about this Hantavirus thing becoming the next pandemic? It's not exactly like we have the best people at the CDC running things right now, should things pop off here.
Yeah. This is a time where I'm grateful and thankful that we have the World Health Organization, who's really been, leading the response here. I think the biggest aspect to the story is the fact that, the CDC has been gutted. And of all the horrible things that this regime has done, gutting the CDC has been one of the worst. And I'm not necessarily super concerned because I'm watching very closely what the WHO says about this becoming a pandemic. Sounds like that it doesn't spread, that quickly like we had with, COVID. So probably not going to be a pandemic. But I think what this really shows is just how vulnerable we are to another pandemic. And so, the CDC has lost its standing in the world. Thankfully, the WHO was there to step in, but man, this is just not a good day for America when it comes to our standing in the world as a leader in public health.
And as climate change continues apace, we're going to find more and more of these weird, zoonotic viruses jumping ship into the human population and circulating. We don't even know where the next pandemic is going to come from now. And certainly with our current leadership in the CDC, they're probably not doing a whole heck of a lot of research into that. I want to look at that other story here I mentioned at the top of the show, a pair of stories, really, Patrick. But do you think this purported UFO release is a distraction from the Epstein stuff as I've framed it? And do you believe in aliens?
Well, it's definitely a bread and circuses move by the Trump administration to distract from things that actually matter. Do aliens exist? Mathematically, yes. Have they ever visited Earth? Mathematically, no. But you can't convince anyone who thinks they've seen one that they don't exist. So it's a pointless argument to have.
It's really just kind of a perpetuation of the conspiracy mindset that has really overtaken the country in the wake of the Trump era. And we sort of talked about this last week in relation to the White House Correspondents' Dinner and the what was it or was it not staged videos that like every person with a camera and a social media account was doing. And I generally think this inability to know the truth plays right into the authoritarians' hands. And this alien thing, just a part of that, I suppose. Suits Trump well. Let's talk about some things of more import, I guess, and move on overseas to the Middle East. Now, last weekend, President Trump announced Project Freedom, a plan to have the U.S. Navy escort stranded commercial ships through the Iranian blockaded Strait of Hormuz. Iran, viewing this as a ceasefire violation, fired missiles and drones at the UAE and Oman and claims it hit a U.S. frigate, though CENTCOM denies this. Regardless, Project Freedom did not last long, partly because Saudi Arabia and Kuwait denied the U.S. use of its bases and airspace to conduct the mission. We also learned earlier this week from CNN that U.S. military sites in those two countries and 6 others were far more heavily damaged by Iranian strikes than had been previously reported. Several bases were rendered effectively unusable, with battered radar equipment constituting the most expensive and significant loss. The Pentagon's gross underestimate of the war's cost, they say $25 billion, does not include repair expenses for these bases. The Saudis and Kuwaitis later this week did reopen their bases and airspace to U.S. access. So despite multiple exchanges of fire between the two sides, the U.S. seized an Iranian oil tanker. The Islamic Republic responded by attacking American destroyers in the Strait. The U.S. retaliated with strikes on Iranian missile sites, and Iran sent another volley of drones at the Emirates. Plus, Israel resumed attacks on Lebanon. Despite all this, President Trump and Secretary of State Marco Rubio insist the ceasefire is holding, with Trump calling the latest U.S. strikes just a love tap. Reuters and Axios reported the primary belligerents were close to a one-page memorandum of understanding to formally end hostilities, with the U.S. apparently dropping its demand to resolve Iran's nuclear program before ending the war. Iran's formal response to the U.S. proposal is expected soon, the State Department also announced Israel-Lebanon peace talks later this week, and Rubio stated the objective of the U.S. efforts is to go back to the way things were before the start of the war. Pat, if I'm hearing Rubio correctly, and the goal is to go back to the way things were, what the hell has been the point of all of this?
Oh, there is no point. This was an unprovoked conflict, probably driven by any number of things. Our relationship with Israel, which seems tenuous at best at this point, our need to distract again. I'm just concerned at the cost in lives more than dollars that this is racked up for no discernible benefit to either country. All we have is dead bodies and high prices and no end in sight because we attacked some oil infrastructure. So it will be 6 to 18 months before we see any kind of real relief at the gas pump. Something that probably didn't work into what simple calculus was on the cognitive exam that the president took. He loves to brag about, I know what a bear looks like too. Let's just say that. I don't know why they called this Epic Fury and why it's all of a sudden over. I saw nothing epic about any of this. The only fury I saw was 11 o'clock on Trump's X posts. So for a guy who's stopped so many wars, I guess he just needs another win in the column here. We'll just break it off early. I know that Reuters reported about an hour ago that Iran did deliver their response to Pakistan, which is working as the intermediary on the quote-unquote peace talks. So perhaps by this afternoon, we'll have a better idea of how much we didn't get out of this.
It's just another Lego video of them giving us the finger, I suspect. But no, you mentioned, Patrick, the death and destruction, and we've not even begun to see a lot of it yet. I mean, right? Like certainly there are the Iranian schoolgirls that we killed on the first day of the war in an AI mistargeted missile strike there. But you mentioned the fuel prices. Here it's an inconvenience and it's going to hurt a lot of folks' budgets. We've also got fertilizer shortages because of this thing. We're not going to see the effects of that for months and months and months. And it might affect us here again, bottom line, in our pocketbooks. There's people that are going to starve to death worldwide because of this thing. We haven't even begun to consider those sort of things yet. Amy, how long is it going to take for the United States international standing to recover from this? Or, I mean, can we ever? Have we driven the rest of the world into China's waiting open arms?
Yeah, I think that second part, it's our standing in the world. I think this shows we don't really have allies anywhere at this point. We've alienated them, and our standing in the world is not just going to come back. I think it's a whole new world at this point, and we're seeing that kind of reshuffling, and we've seen different kinds of alliances coming out. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. As it interesting times that we continue to live in, but to see how the relationships across the world kind of reshuffle and find a kind of the new standing going forward. But the U.S. I think it's been described as like superpower suicide by Timothy Snyder, who is one of the foremost professors of authoritarianism, and someone that I read, and that's exactly what it is. It's there was no reason, it was unprovoked. His own base didn't want forever wars. I don't know what we're doing. Maybe there's an opening there to reach some of those people, but man, it's just devastating. It's devastating.
Yeah, you worry about who is going to reach those people. You see folks like Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene who are actually leaning into this and, talking about, well, hey, Trump betrayed us. He's starting these forever wars. He's being dog walked by Israel. Of course, they get really anti-Semitic when they talk about that, not just like, hey, this is the Netanyahu government and his cabal of criminals there that are leading this thing. It doesn't reflect on, I don't know, the entire Jewish population of the world like they would have you believe. But to what you said about our reputation, and obviously China being there waiting with open arms, Trump, that is, has done incalculable damage to American democracy, certainly, but just like the concept of democracy in general, I think, because like, oh, okay, well, you've got a madman now, but maybe you'll have a sane person come back in 4 years. I don't know how anybody in the world can trust us if we do elect, sane people to lead us going forward. How are they going to trust that we're not going to just elect a new madman 4 years after that? Meanwhile, China can plan things on like time horizons of like 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating for Chinese communism. I'm not. All right, world, listen. But I don't know. There's something to be said, Patrick, for planning and consistency. And I don't know. Am I wrong?
No, you're absolutely right. If I'm Belgium, let's say, and I'm looking at the world picture and I see that the majority of the components and materials I need are manufactured in China, and I see a very disruptive and unstable American government at this point with no promise that the next elected leader is going to be able to right that ship, I'm giving China a call. That's not communism, that's capitalism. They're the ones that have an electric vehicle that goes roughly twice as far as anything the U.S. makes at 1/3 the cost. It's sold everywhere else. I was down in Mexico back in March, got to see 2 or 3 of these really nice looking fully electric cars with 800-mile ranges on a single charge. I know that they've fully automated their vehicle plants there. And so Toyota and Ford and a lot of these other companies are saying, if China is given unfettered access to the markets with these types of products, our system of commerce is going to change drastically. A lot of American companies are going to go out of business. That's going to be a lot of joblessness. We've created this environment and this possibility inadvertently by taking these strongman approaches to global politics. I don't believe that the U.S. Can be trusted at this point, and I don't believe that it will be trusted. It will probably be a generation before we can begin to reassert ourselves as perhaps the top economic and political nation in the world. We're abdicating our throne, in effect.
Yeah, Amy, I kind of want to frame what Patrick just said in terms of like relationship building. counseling. I don't know if anybody here's ever been to marriage counseling, but are familiar with like John Gottman. And they tell you how you can... It takes like between 5 and 20 positive interactions to outweigh one negative one. So like say your partner makes a bid for your attention and you deny them. Well, you're going to have to like make that up between 5 and 20 times. You have a fight, between 5 and 20 times. You have to prove yourself trustworthy. And America has certainly proven itself not trustworthy. And, if it's going to take, I would say, between 5 and 20 presidential administrations before we can regain the world's trust. 5 makes a generation, 20 makes a century.
That's right, but that's a real possibility.
Yeah. So I go back to, 2016, we elected Trump. 2020, we supposedly went back to a sane person and elected Biden. But let's be real. He handed us over to the fascists on a silver platter, right? His ego completely got in the way. We didn't have a primary election for 2024. So many problems there. And so I think it's one of the big progressive arguments, right? That like, we can't just going back to the corporate captured Democratic Party is not going to get us out of this, is not going to get us where we need to be. And so just getting someone else in the White House, it's not going to do it. The only way that we are going to come back is, number one, for massive numbers of Americans to get out of the streets and to raise their voices and, maybe a national strike, things like that. Use all the tools that we have available to us. It's going to take that, and it's going to take massive democracy reform in this country. And until those things are passed, until we have a big FDR style, reform initiative in this country, we're just, even if we get lucky and somehow we get these turkeys out of office when they clearly have no intention of leaving, we're just going to keep going back and forth, right, until we fix it. And we've been here before. We fixed it once back, 30s and 40s, and here we are again. And it's us against the oligarchy. As soon as Americans really understand that and see that, and that it's not left versus right, just getting a Democrat in doesn't do anything until we recognize, it is the oligarchy against the rest of us. And so, I think it's many generations, and it's just a completely different world at this point.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Democratic complicity in getting us to where we were. Put a pin in that. But first, let's talk about Trump and his monuments to himself, as it were. Now, as you recall, 2 weeks ago at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, like I said, there was this, as I like to call it, it was an attempted assassination, with the assailant barely making it past the first line of defense, getting off no shots, and never seriously threatening any member of the administration. Still, the president and his network of MAGA sycophants all reached the same conclusion at the same time. This security breach never would have happened if the event had taken place in Trump's proposed ballroom on the former site of the White House's East Wing, RIP. Trump originally promised the 90,000 square foot East Wing ballroom would cost $200 million and be fully privately funded. The construction estimate has since grown to $400 million. Then Senate Republicans quietly tucked $1 billion in taxpayer money for security upgrades into an ICE funding bill. The underground complex beneath the ballroom, including a bunker, military installations, and a medical facility, is driving much of the security cost rationale. Trump admitted on Air Force One that the ballroom is essentially a roof over a new underground military complex. It replaces the World War II era Presidential Emergency Operations Center with something far larger and more capable. The details to this only surface because the administration's own court filings described the project while they were fighting a preservation lawsuit. A judge halted the above-ground construction pending congressional approval, but allowed underground work to continue. Who knows what they're doing down there? But this isn't even the only boondoggle remaking DC's landscape in Trump's image, right? This proposed 250-foot gilded arch proposed to be erected on the Virginia side of the Potomac opposite the Lincoln Memorial. When asked who it would honor, Trump said, me. According to the Hill, if erected, the arch would largely disrupt the vital visual connection between the Lincoln Memorial and Arlington National Cemetery and its graves. That connection, as Capitol preservation expert Zachary Burt points out, quote, symbolizes the sacrifices our nation has made in pursuit of its highest ideal. The proposed arch threatens the solemn vista. Nearly 1,000 public comments opposed it. None supported it. Americans oppose it 51% to 21%. Trump's appointee stacked Commission of Fine Arts approved it anyway. Lawsuits are pending. NPR this week cataloged every physical change Trump is making to Washington. The ballroom, the arch, the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool, which they're painting blue, the Kennedy Center, a proposed sculpture garden to take over the city's golf courses, and on and on and on. Amy, that $200 billion privately funded ballroom turned into $1 billion plus of taxpayer money awfully quickly, didn't it?
It always does. I don't think we can trust anything that this administration says. Yeah, I don't even know what to say. I mean, $1 billion, hidden in the hidden in plain sight, I guess, in that funding bill. Like, come on, when are Americans going to say enough is enough? I don't know. But again, I like to follow the authoritarian experts, and Ruth Ben-Ghiat, another phenomenal professor who I read regularly. She's been talking about how all these monuments and, it comes from a place of insecurity and, being afraid of losing their standing. And so, well, it's understandable that all this is happening. It's sad that we have, legislators that are happy to just appease this nonsense. But, I think I saw 1 out of 6 Trump voters regret their vote. So, like, his
That's
standing, his approval is just going down, and so, of course, we're going to see things like this, that, he wants to build monuments. And I mean, it's disgusting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Patrick, right? Like last summer, it was the banners with Trump's face going up on government buildings and, pure strongman optics, but at least those are easily removable. But now this wholesale remaking of the Capitol and his image is just like removing all doubt. He's totally turned it up to 11. How long before he starts appearing in public in like a fully decorated 6-star general's uniform?
Oh my. I don't know that he has the guts to go that far, but this is a man who desperately wants to be accepted and loved, but doesn't know how to get there, knows that he's unpopular, and yet he wants to be immortal. He knows that he's in his late 70s, that this trip is just about concluded, but rather than let history dictate who he was, we'll have coins with his image that we printed this summer. We've got that monument, which I'm telling you, it'll appear. He'll get that one done before he's out of office. The Palm Springs airport that now has his name in gold. He's renamed things. He's putting his image everywhere because he desperately wants to be remembered as anything other than what he will be remembered. He's fully aware of what his legacy is going to be, even if he publicly denies it. And that's what keeps him up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, constantly urging people to see things his way. It's a pathetically small man trying to gain relevancy when he's already, that barn door opened a long time ago.
I think of the famous image from the end of World War II where the Allies capture the Reichstag in Berlin and they blow up the swastika that had been placed on it, right? And my mind, I'm imagining the Arc de Triomphe being blown up now before it's even built. It warms the cockles of my heart. But to what Amy said a little bit earlier, I fully understand the proportions here are not the same, right? But Trump isn't the only living president building shrines to himself. David Sirota at The Lever had this one. The $850 million Obama Presidential Center is slated to open in June, funded by tech giants, Wall Street firms, telecom companies, and a health insurer. Its sponsor list is context for a presidency that promised hope and change and then used a massive electoral mandate to deliver more of the same. Indeed, the list is a who's who of the winners of the Obama era. Tech moguls, financial giants, telecom behemoths, the health insurer, right? And other bold-faced names of the oligarchy. The center is built in Chicago's South Side, despite community protests that it would accelerate gentrification. Obama used an interview with Stephen Colbert inside the center to criticize Trump's corruption, which is accurate, but self-serving, giving his own post-presidential enrichment. Sirota argues that presidential libraries are a shadow corruption system, rewarding corporate-friendly governance with post-presidential wealth and monuments. But hey, at least you can buy an empathy baseball cap at the gift shop for $35. Pat, the vote blue no matter who crowd might not want to hear this, but Trump and Obama aren't playing in the league, they're not in the same league, but they're playing the same sport.
Well, just like every politician that's ever gotten on the stage at the national level, they have to pay deference to the people who actually control this country, and that is a big business. That is the oligarchs. We lost that fight 50 years ago. We just were that frog in the frying pan, didn't realize the heat was being turned up. But we're still going through this pantomime of democracy, and then we're shocked when guys on our team act like guys on their team. We're not on their team. We never were. Once they get to that level, they're now a different class, and they're dealing with different people. There's a different economic system at play there that we'll never really access, though we're all promised if we work hard enough, we can make it into that class. And that's the myth of the American dream that persists, though no one has really realized that in multiple generations. So Obama's building a center. I probably won't go see it, just like I wouldn't go see the Trump Museum or any of the other ones that have been built. I'm more concerned about what you accomplished while you were in office for the people, rather than the monument that you've placed for yourself.
Amy, how do we talk about this with Democrats who sort of have this Obama worship syndrome? It's still there, and I think that there's a lot of folks, the vote blue no matter who crowd, they're like, oh, everything Republicans do is bad, everything Democrats do is good, and fail to reckon with the fact that we, and I say we when I refer to Democrats, played a part in paving the road to fascism.
100%. Yeah, this is a tough conversation, and this is where people get confused and they think it's a left versus right issue. It is not. Just getting Democrats in does nothing. It is absolutely the oligarchy against the rest of us. And until we as American voters really see that and respond to it, we're still locked into this very anti-democratic, situation that we find ourselves in right now. Yeah, you just can't escape it. Like money in politics is a problem, and I know we're gonna talk about it in the bottom half of the hour or the bottom hour, however you say it, when we get to Indiana, but. One of the things I always say is, power is organized money or organized people. And those of us, who stand for the people, we're never going to win if the fight is based in the money. We only win when we show up and when the people, make a showing. And so, and even the Republicans, and we'll talk about it, even the Republicans can't win against the money if the oligarchs decide to use it against them, right? And so until we recognize that that's one of the fundamental problems, and I know here in the 7th congressional district, that was a big part of the conversation with like the Destiny Wells campaign and not taking corporate money and, having Andre Carson taking corporate money. And I totally understand the point around, okay, but you need money to win. But when that's the playing field, none of those big corporations are on our side. They're not on the side of the people. And so, until we can get more people to understand that, we are just going to be locked in. We might have it's two sides of the same coin, and until we see that, we're just going to keep getting more of the same.
And I always come back to, go ahead, Patrick.
To say, when it comes down to it, the people need to have a voice. Every major social and political change that's taken place in the United States in its history has started with a protest or a riot. And that's when we get some progress. But is that progress legitimate, or is it just a crumb that's being held out to us by our masters to assuage our tempers temporarily? Because now we can go 50 years later and we can eliminate the Voting Rights Act. And so what was the fight for in the 1960s? It's this kind of cycle where you have to have the fight. My girlfriend or life partner, however you want to call her, she is an organizer of Operation Blue Horizon here in Howard County. And their meat and potatoes is demonstrations and protests and awareness. And we've had this discussion about, is it worthwhile to stand on the courthouse square and chant? Is that protest having an impact? And in the larger scheme of things, no. But you still have to have the fight. You still have to be out there, and you have to have your voice heard, because there's a point where that will tip over and we will get some progress. So you're going to lose the war, but you can win the battle, and the battle's worth having.
Democracy improv. Yes, that. And right, we have to do the other things as well. Let's look at let's change topics here, and I guess it's been fun criticizing the government. Let's enjoy it while we can, because if this administration has its way, the First Amendment will be a thing of the past. This week, the White House issued a new counterterrorism strategy memo authored by Sebastian Gorka. It lists, quote, violent left-wing extremists as a threat equal to narco-terrorists and jihadists. It makes no mention, of course, of far-right violent groups, despite decades of data showing it's right-wing extremism that is the dominant domestic terrorism threat. So who are these violent left-wing extremists Gorka mentions? Well, according to them, it is, quote, anti-American, radically pro-transgender, and anti-fascist activists, treating a decentralized popular protest movement as a foreign-linked terrorist network. And journalists, too. Apparently, the FBI this week opened a criminal leak investigation targeting Atlantic reporter Sarah Fitzpatrick, who recently released a well-sourced article detailing FBI Director Kash Patel's excessive drinking and unexplained absences. Unusually, the probe does not involve classified leaks. It targets leaks to a journalist about Patel's conduct. The Atlantic called it, quote, an outrageous, illegal, and dangerous attack on the free press. They, to their credit, are not cowed, and it issued, in response, another article. This one detailing Patel's personalized bourbon stash. Apparently, the FBI director travels with personally engraved bottles of Woodford Reserve bearing Kash Patel, FBI director, on an FBI shield and his signature on them, and hands them out to staff and civilians alike. He used the DOJ aircraft to transport cases of the bourbon, including to the Olympics in Milan. At a training seminar with UFC fighters in Quantico, I can't possibly make this stuff up, a bottle went missing and Patel threatened to polygraph and prosecute his own staff over it. Agents told attorneys they're afraid to refuse the bottles. One said declining enthusiastically could get you polygraphed for loyalty. A former agent called this conduct demoralizing, noting they signal one standard for the director and another for everyone else. And a former FBI supervisory analyst summed it up thusly, quote, handing out bottles of liquor at the premier law enforcement agency, it makes me frightened for our country. And I guess, look, Patrick, it's not about the liquor, right? It's about the double standard. It's about Patel's personal conduct. It's about mismanagement of government assets and resources. I mean, this guy is patently unqualified, but he is very good at one thing, and that is kissing Donald Trump's ass.
Well, that's true on any day ending in Y. I'm really more interested in the Woodford Reserve itself. I like bourbon, and that's a good bourbon, and I wonder if it's a special formulation and how I might get a hold of one of those bottles. I don't want to kiss ass to get it, so maybe I can mail campaign it or something. But no, this is a joke. The whole thing is a joke. There isn't much that you can take seriously coming out of this administration. Patel is the poster child for the idiocy that takes place. I still want that bourbon.
Listen, Woodford Reserve, quality stuff. Woodford Reserve, if you're listening, I'm accepting sponsorships. But Amy, zooming out, away from Patel and his poor behavior, which is kind of, the flashy thing to look at here. This anti-terrorism memo and they're equating protesters, anti-fascists, run-of-the-mill transgender people with right-wing terrorists as if we're the same thing. That is concerning.
Yeah, I think it just shows how unserious this administration is with the whole, cash whiskey bottles. I mean, like, good God, like, what is going on there? And you want to be like, okay, haha, that's kind of funny, is drinking, whatever. But when you look at this, where you are, okay, if there's violence on the left or the right, nobody wants it. We're all against violence, right? We can agree on that. But the data clearly shows that there's a much bigger problem with right-wing violence in this country, and we're not going after it. But instead of even going after the true, maybe little left-wing violence, we're just going after people that are, trying to stand up for their own humanity, right? Or, trying to exercise their free speech rights. And it's just devastating, and it's all part of the same, I don't even know. I don't even have the words sometimes for some of this. It's just we're not going after the right things, and so we're less safe as a result. And it's another piece out of the authoritarian playbook where it's kind of like we're an opposite land, where we're pretending like, oh, there's no right wing violence, it's all on the left, and let's go after the transgender people, and it's like, come on. Yeah. So I don't know. I have no words.
Let's talk about their sort of misplaced priorities, right? They're talking about eyeballing anti-fascists and transgender activists as the enemies of the people, and meanwhile, they're letting go blatant corruption, right? This week, NPR detailed a whole list of the kind of folks Trump has pardoned. He's at least 15 former elected officials convicted or charged with corruption since taking office. The DOJ's public integrity section, which prosecutes public corruption and election crimes, has shrunk from about 35 to 40 attorneys to just 2. Open cases in that unit dropped from roughly 200 to about 20. Pardons have gone mostly to Republicans, but also Democrats Trump was courting, like Henry Cuellar and former Illinois Governor Rod Blagojevich. One pardon went to a Las Vegas councilwoman convicted of pocketing $70,000 in donations meant for memorials to slain police officers, which she spent on cosmetic surgery and her daughter's wedding. As one does. Experts say rural and small state communities get hit hardest. The bottom line from NPR's reporting is this: the administration is signaling that public corruption simply isn't worth enforcing, and experts warn that eats away at government until officials serve themselves first. as we have seen. Now, the Justice Department, not prosecuting public corruption, but they are looking at prosecuting former CIA Director John Brennan. The lead prosecutor on that case told GOJ brass in Washington the evidence was too weak to charge him and was removed from the case days later. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche replaced her with Joe DiGenova, a Trump loyalist who briefly represented Trump in one of the very probes he's now investigating. DiGenova is basing himself in Fort Pierce, Florida. Why? Because that is the home to Judge Eileen Cannon, who killed the Mar-a-Lago documents case against Trump. The U.S. attorney running the office down there, Reding Quinones, was not a top pick for the job. Former colleagues describe poor performance reviews and a work ethic that didn't stand out. More than 100 vacancies now exist in the Miami U.S. Attorney's Office after experienced career prosecutors fled or were purged. So this is a weak case against Brennan. The prosecutor who wanted, or who said as much, got removed. Prosecutors willing to build up this Trump case are put in charge. Now, what are they building toward here? Between this Brennan probe and the recent raid of vote centers in Atlanta and Fulton County, Georgia, which a judge this week ruled the DOJ can keep, by the way, and Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard's role in that raid, it shows what they're building toward. And I've linked in the show notes a piece from an outlet called Just the News. And we should mention that Just the News is an outlet operated by John Solomon, a known MAGA propagandist. But it's important to know what they're talking about, and what they're claiming is that so Gabbard's office is referring claims to the Inspector General alleging that the CIA suppressed evidence of Chinese election interference in 2020. A CIA officer was allegedly asked to alter evidence of Chinese meddling to avoid helping Trump, and that China may have accessed voter registration databases in 12 to 18 states in 2020. Also, a Venezuelan election interference vulnerability was also allegedly suppressed. They're trying to say that China and maybe Venezuela interfered in the 2020 election, that Brennan, in his role as CIA director in 2016, manufactured the Russia hoax. They're going to use this as pretext to either cancel or crack down on voting this year, this fall, claiming foreign interference. I don't know. Am I wrong? Amy, what do you think?
Yeah, it's all adding up to this is not going anywhere good. And I just want to go back and make a point on the pardons, right? And the fact that, again, I cannot stress this enough. This is not a left versus a right issue. This is a top versus the rest of us issue, right? Like, there are Democrats on the list, right? Corruption is not exclusive to one party. It's on both sides. And I just wanted to go back and put a point on that. But when it comes to the election this year, oh man, who knows what we're even looking at. I don't think we're going to see elections canceled, but will they be, fully free and fair? To be determined. And so it's, definitely a space to watch. I'm glad that we've got, people like Mark Elias who are, doing everything that they can from a legal standpoint to push back against, what the administration is trying to do. We just have to stay vigilant. And I know it's a constant onslaught of bad news, but when it comes to voting, that's our only path back from this. And so we have to put, special focus there. And it's certainly cause for alarm with what we're seeing.
Yeah. Patrick, what do you think?
Well, when it comes to the pardons, I would not be at all surprised if there is a significant exchange of money from the affected party to someone in Trump's orbit, if not the Trump organization itself. I don't think that those are accidental or merit-based. I think that they are most definitely either a loyalty or a fiscal issue. So if you've got the right amount of money, you know the right people, you're going to get a pardon from this president, no questions asked. That's concerning because we've turned a blind eye to corruption, and then we've decimated the organizations that would be able to root out that corruption and bring it to trial. Instead, limiting its focus to just political opponents of the president, which makes him happy, which keeps those people in their positions. The first time that you displease Trump, you're removed. We've seen that over and over again, not just in this term, but in his previous term. So they're acting out of fear. Of course, they're going to push Trump's agenda because they want to eat. And that has kind of overridden whatever moral stand they might have internally. It's not about what's right anymore. It's about what benefits me and, unfortunately, what benefits the president. When it comes to accusing China and Venezuela being involved in the 2020 election, I don't know if there's any evidence to support that. I don't believe that it would have been significant enough to change the outcome. I know that he still wants to deny that he has a loss on his record, but that's going to go down in history. He did not serve in those 4 years. It doesn't matter what argument he makes now. He was a loser. He continues to be a loser. This doesn't rewrite the history book at all. Right, exactly. But what it does do is it creates a renewed enemy for the people to focus upon, and then a new enemy in Venezuela, which kind of partially justifies his strikes on Maduro earlier this year. Hey, Maduro's a bad guy, deserved to go down, but I don't think we should be snatching world leaders out of their bed at 2:00 in the morning with bombs. But that's the way we chose to do it. And now the American people are properly motivated to hate Venezuelans, which also feeds the anti-immigrant rhetoric that he's pushed without, other than beating on our own people, not really accomplished what he wanted to accomplish. But we are definitely inhumane in our treatment of those we've seized. This would only fuel that, I think, especially when it came to people of Latin American heritage. And with China, China has to be our Russia because we're in bed with Russia. So we've got to have the big bad guy. What we don't realize is we're handing them the farm in the process.
Yeah, glad you mentioned that Maduro raid because, listen, we mentioned the monuments to Trump and the monument to Obama being like the same league, but the same sport, but not necessarily the same league. Well, there's a little raid in Virginia this week. Again, much smaller scale, not violent. Nobody was pulled out of their bed at 2:00 in the morning, but hey, the FBI did raid the offices of the Virginia Senate President Pro Tem Louise Lucas on May 6th, weeks after she led the state's Democratic redistricting push. Agents also searched a cannabis dispensary she co-owns as part of a corruption and bribery probe. I should mention this investigation was opened during the Biden administration, not initiated by Kash Patel's FBI. But Virginia's House Speaker did publicly question the timing, citing Patel's leadership and, of course, the redistricting context. Put a pin in that because we need to talk about redistricting and voting and the way it's going to affect the elections this year, but also in the grander scheme of things and the historical context going back to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. As you recall, last week, the Supreme Court issued a ruling gutting the Voting Rights Act. And that was the decision effectively eliminated Section 2 as a meaningful protection against minority vote dilution. The 6-3 ruling along partisan lines requires proof of intentional racism to challenge a discriminatory map, making racial gerrymandering cases nearly impossible to win. You have to basically be really explicit and say we're doing this for racial purposes. But partisan gerrymandering, which accomplishes the same damn thing, well, that is okay. And southern states, turns out, wasted no time in looking to capitalize on this ruling. Louisiana suspended its House primaries entirely to redraw new maps, despite certain mail-in ballots already having been cast in that case. Eric Holder's National Democratic Redistricting project estimated between 12 and 19 House seats in majority minority districts across the South are now at risk. More concerning, and we are not hearing a lot about this. It's going to go under the radar. This ruling also applies to state legislative, county, and municipal maps, school boards, city councils, judgeships, all of this stuff affected downstream. In Florida, Ron DeSantis and his state legislature passed new maps already, despite having recently already passed gerrymandered maps down there. In Tennessee, this week, all hell broke loose as lawmakers in Tennessee's Republican supermajority passed new congressional maps in a 3-day special session, eliminating the state's only majority black district in Memphis. The White House provided guidance, boundary data, and population figures, but lawmakers there claimed they drew these maps themselves. Republican Senator John Stevens claimed he didn't know Memphis city limits or that it was a majority-minority city. Shelby County Senator Brent Taylor, who helped draw the maps, immediately announced his candidacy for the newly created 9th District. This is the same map, ironically, that they threw out, that the Attorney General down there successfully defended in 2022, and now he has to argue against it. The Justins, who were made famous as part of the Tennessee Three a couple years ago, protesting the gun laws in the state in the wake of a mass shooting down there in Nashville. Justin Jones burned a Confederate flag in the Capitol. Justin Pearson called the maps a new 3/5 compromise on the House floor. Troopers arrested Pearson's brother in the gallery. Pearson is a candidate in the 9th District, which is being eliminated and is now a plaintiff in the federal lawsuit to block these maps. Alabama is also planning on a new U.S. House primary if the courts there allow the district redistricting. And Virginia, I told you to put a pin in that, where they raided the lawmaker's office. Well, the Supreme Court there in that state struck down the redistricting that had been passed there by voters just a couple weeks ago in a 4-3 decision on Friday. So, Amy, one of the few things Democrats have done to push back against this massive Republican redistricting scheme, had the voters approve it, still gets squashed. Devastating loss there.
Devastating. Again, I was talking earlier about the CDC and what's happened there being one of the worst things. No, I take that back. Like this is one of the worst things that this regime has done. And this has been decades of the other side working against this. The Roberts Court has cemented its place in history. The Confederacy is alive and well, and we saw that with the way those southern states just they couldn't get to redraw those maps fast enough. And some of the imagery that was coming out of Tennessee this week, oh my gosh. I saw someone posted online, someone I will say on the other side, that Justin Pearson with some of those images was cosplaying the civil rights movement. And it's just like, good God, our educational system has failed us in this country. If you don't understand that, no, this is the civil rights movement, right? Like it didn't end. We thought like, oh, we got progress, and so we're not going to have to worry about it going back. And that was completely wrong. The other side, they never stopped fighting. And now, this is something that John Roberts has wanted his whole career. And, it's just absolutely devastating to see. And I think it's also more of like, we're not in the same game, not even in the same game at all. And when it comes to Virginia, the Democratic states, they're wanting to put it to the voters, which, okay, that's really important. And then I get it. There's a technicality that, voting had started and yada, yada. Okay, fine. But that's what the voters wanted. You're still overruling the will of the people. And it's continuing to play out, and it is not looking good. And again, it's going to take massive numbers of people in the streets, general strike, turning out to vote, having conversations with their neighbors. It's the only way that we can overcome the way that they're fixing it mathematically against us. But man, it's this country was built on racism. It was built on enslaved labor, and this is who America is. And if this is not the country that you or me or that we want it to be, we have got to do something. And especially those who look like the three of us on here, right? This is not a Black person's fight. This is all of us. The reason we cannot have nice things in this country is often because of racism, right? And until we grapple with some of that, this is just absolutely horrendous, and it will go down in history as one of the, just hopefully anyway, I guess when history gets written, when we eventually come back and win. But man, just absolutely devastating. And it's numbers. It's the only thing that that's the tool that we have to fight it. And we're nowhere near the numbers that we need right now.
A lot in there, Amy. And you mentioned, well, no, it's the racism has always been used as a tool to keep the lower classes divided, so the handful of people can take everything for themselves. It's the tech oligarchs. It was the slavers 150 plus years ago. And Patrick, she mentioned Roberts working on this project for 40 plus years. And, he was in the Reagan administration in 1982 when they argued against renewing the Voting Rights Act then. And by the time it's all said and done, like, the Roberts court will have undone the entirety of the Warren court, or at least it seems like that's what they want to do. And, folks our age, I think we kind of took for granted that the gains of the Warren court were baked in, that the long arc of the universe is bent toward justice and all that, and like that we were on the way up, and those things couldn't be undone. Man, this is a real kick in the teeth to number one, African Americans in this country, and Latinos, in other places where they've been gerrymandered away as well. Arizona had a bad history of doing that. It's not just the South, but also anybody who cares about justice. It's a real, make America great again, right? Well, when was America great in these people's mind? 1950, 1850?
I'm still waiting on that one. I don't think we've been great yet. We wear the black hat throughout our history. We built this nation on genocide and slavery. And I want to make it clear that all racism is intentional. They've passed this law that says that you can only contest these redistricting if it's clear that it was intentionally racist. If it's racist, it was intentional. There's really no question there. From the I've said the N-word to your face, to I've had a black man beaten to death by a cop, to I've had their own water fountains where they can't come into the restaurant. All these things were intentional, but it's institutional as well. And that was by design. So this is creating a false dichotomy. It doesn't exist. Racism is intentional. So these laws, if argued properly, should be able to be overturned, but they won't be argued properly. This serves what we really are. This comes down to the base psyche of the American white, we'll say white male, because Amy, you're next, just in case you're wondering. The purple hair, your political leanings, and the fact that you are a woman, you will be targeted soon once they take care of the racist issue that they are overcoming. So I would see a very white, very male Congress 8 years from now. I don't think this is something we can stop. I think they've dismantled enough of the inner workings of our government that we no longer have the tools to overcome this. So we are just strapped into this ride to hell. We'll see where it ends up.
And to what Amy talked about, it's going to take a lot of activism and marching and organizing and protesting and yes, voting, but we're not going to only be able to vote our way out of this. I think I saw this week in the New York Times, and I've flagged it in our show notes, by the way. Subscribe over at progressiveindiana.net, and you can see those, that given these changes and all this redistricting that they're doing in the South, if everything goes through, Republicans could lose the national popular vote by like 4 points and still maintain control of the House, given all of this gerrymandering. Like I said, you can't vote your way over that. It's going to take overwhelming numbers, but still, we do have to vote, and we can't be discouraged from voting, and we have to talk about elections. We'll get to Indiana's major elections here in just a second. First, I do need to briefly mention there were other places that had elections on Tuesday in Ohio and Michigan. Not a lot of surprises in Ohio. Vivek Ramaswamy won the Republican gubernatorial nomination and will face Democrat Amy Acton, the former Ohio health director there, in November. Sherrod Brown, a former senator, won the Democratic Senate primary and will face Republican John Husted in what is expected to be one of the nation's marquee Senate races, a real chance for a Democratic pickup there. In Michigan, our neighbors to the north, Democrat Chedrick Green, a Marine veteran and retired fire captain, defeated Republican Jason Tunney by roughly 20 points in the 35 Senate district special election there. That win preserves Democrats' slim majority in the Michigan Senate. A Tunney win would have deadlocked the chamber at 19 apiece. This seat had been vacant since January of 2025 when Senator Kristen McDonald-Rivet took her congressional seat. This district voted for Trump in 2024 and Alyssa Slotkin for Senate, so it is a swingy district, making the 20-point Democratic margin Tuesday a notable result. Now, not a whole lot of surprise there. I'm not going to get comment from you guys. Let's turn to Indiana elections. But before we do, a quick 45-second break while we hear a word from my friends down in Salem.
Crossroads Commons in Salem, Indiana, headquartered in a historic Salem home, is holding a fundraiser to expand via the purchase of the 3/4-acre lot of land adjacent to their facility. Please consider donating or spread the word so that they can further expand their services to the community. Scan the QR code on your screen for a direct link to the donation page and help us buy the grass.
Very good. And then listen, if anybody watching, you have an organization that needs to raise funds in a similar way to our friends down there in Salem, reach out to me. Email me at scott@whosleft.us, and I would be happy to run your little promotion there at the break in the show like I just did. Also, hey, advertising, why the hell not? If you got a business, yeah, holler at me. But for right now, let us come back and talk about the major Indiana elections this week. And we were very much at the center of the political universe, as it were. Trump flexing his muscle all the way down here in Indiana local state elections. Now, at the state Senate level, as you recall, back in December, the Trump administration was trying to get Indiana to redistrict much in the way the South is doing now. These are the same story. And our state Senate, to their credit, Republicans in it rejected this scheme. Well, this week they got theirs at the hands of Trump-endorsed candidates. 6 Republican challengers endorsed by Trump defeated incumbents, with another Trump-backed candidate winning an open primary seat. Only one of the 8 senators opposed by pro-redistricting groups, that's Greg Good of Terre Haute, was a certain winner. Travis Holdman, Jim Buck, Linda Rogers, Dan Durno, Rick Niemeyer, and Greg Walker all losing by wide margins, really, at least 56% of the vote for the challengers in all of those races. This could jeopardize Senate leadership positions Rod Bray has held since 2018. Trump and his pro-redistricting allies sought pledges from primary challengers that they would not, or that they would seek to oust Bray as Senate President pro tem. We should also mention that Senator Spencer Deary of West Lafayette, he was another one who voted against redistricting. He is ahead of challenger Paula Copenhaver by just 3 votes. So we due to have a recount there for sure. Also, up in Fort Wayne, Liz Brown, a MAGA senator in her own right, she had Trump's endorsement. Well, she was being primaried by an even further right Darren Vogt, who was endorsed by Jim Banks and Todd Rokita. That is also a very close race. Brown leading by only 15 votes there. So those two still yet to be decided. At the state house level, voting against redistricting didn't seem to matter as much. Incumbents Greg Sturwell, Peggy Mayfield, and Jennifer Meltzer won despite defying Trump in December. And the one Republican House member who did lose actually was Trump-endorsed Bruce Borders, who in his spare time is an Elvis impersonator. That's right, Elvis has left the building. I guess we'll come back to the congressional races, but I really want to start here and talk about these Senate races. This was probably the major political story in the country this week outside of the VRA fallout. And like I mentioned, Pat, it's part of the same story.
Oh, absolutely. This was, I have to eat a little crow. I was interviewed just before the primary election by The Economist out of Washington, D.C., wanting to know what the temperature was in these Senate races. And based upon what I had seen in December, and talking to some of our local legislators offline, I felt like that resistance to being meddled with by outside sources would prevail. I was wrong. On election night, when I showed up at Republican headquarters, it's a festive atmosphere because they win all the time, and they had a very strong turnout. We only had 25% total turnout for Howard County, but 9 out of every 10 voters pulled a Republican ballot because of these contested races. So as I step in there, I'm expecting, an ebullient, joyous crowd. It was somewhat subdued compared to what my expectation was. And when I walked up to Judy Buck, Jim Buck's wife, I could tell immediately that the race was over before the votes were counted. Her comment to me was, we couldn't overcome $1.3 million in spending in this local race from PACs. We're going to lose. And sure enough, lost significantly to a man who's a Tipton County commissioner here in our district. From all reports, decent guy. But I wouldn't have slated him as a MAGA representative. He actually has support from Democrats in the community. I know a few of them were advocating for him privately. So he doesn't fit that mold. And I really thought with that broader support, the red meat base of the Republican Party would reject at least that candidate. And again, I was wrong. And this was played out all across the state.
I'm surprised the scale and the scope with which they nearly swept these races. Really, only Greg Good survived this thing. That race was a weird one in its own right. We talked about that in the weeks leading up to this thing. There were 2 candidates with the same last name running against him, though I should note that he finished with over 50% regardless. That scheme, if you want to call it a scheme, wouldn't have been successful anyway. But Amy, Now, when Pat talked to the economist, they asked him about the temperature here. Are these results really a reflection of the temperature in Indiana? I mean, these are like the raw vote totals in some of these races are really small. This is a handful of hardcore folks having an outsized influence in our elections.
100%. I was looking at the numbers and trying to understand, what was going on here. And so I was looking at, okay, how many registered voters are in the state? How many do we have in each Senate district? And then what percentage actually turned out? So I was looking at like Linda Rogers' race in Senate District 11. And the Trump endorsed candidate got just under 6,000 votes out of what would be like an estimated 94,000 registered voters across both parties in that district. That's 6.2% of the population. And so to me, one of the biggest takeaways here is it is our low voter turnout that is giving us these results. And unless we are able to increase the turnout and get more reasonable people voting, this is what's going to happen when you've got such low voter turnout in these elections. The extremists who are really, wanting to, do what the master says, they have the opportunity to win. And I think that's what we saw. But this is not a majority of the state. This is not like, oh, we're so red and we'll do whatever Trump says. No, I think, again, as I said in the first hour, even the Republicans can't overcome the money when it's used against them. Right? So it's not left versus right. It's top versus bottom. And that's even true on the right. And, I go back to, I think the stats are that 1 in 6 Trump voters regret their vote. That it seems to me like, yeah, they won. And I don't know how much of it was like voter suppression tactics or, the money going in and it was just enough to get the, more extreme voters to turn out. But no, this is not what the majority of Hoosiers want. So it will be interesting to see because this sets us up for an interesting general election in the fall because, you've now got these Trump endorsed candidates and we're going to have contested races. And so there will be a choice. And so are we going to let big money from out of state, are we going to let them win and have this outsized influence in our elections? Or are we going to finally, flip the script and, maybe start to claw our way back from the, 20 years of one party rule we've had in this state? So I think it's going to be interesting to see how these wins translate. And I, for one, am hoping it backfires, but it'll be up to the voters.
Well, let me ask about that backfire potential, Pat. Amy said that 1 in 6 1 in 6 Trump voters now regrets their vote. I'm guessing that those 1 in 6 weren't your primary voters on Tuesday, but they might be general election voters in November. Does the extremism of some of these candidates is the Trump endorsement a kiss of death with a very unpopular president? Do Democrats have an opening in November against some of these far right extreme Senate candidates who don't have the power of incumbency, who maybe don't have the name recognition in their communities, and Democrats are running in every Senate race this year for the first time since 1974.
There's a real possibility for gains here. The Republican Party is, in effect, eating itself with this Trump influence. And when I go back to Jim Buck was the former national director of ALEC, which is easily one of the most conservative anti-people organizations that's ever been devised in this nation. And he can't hold his seat against Trump. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this fall. There are a lot of moving pieces here that can change the landscape quickly. is Trump and are his PACs going to spend at that level in these races in the fall? They certainly have the resources to do so, or are they going to assume that Democrats are going to be an easy pushover as they have been in the past and not invest in these races? I think we have some real possibilities to gain some state seats, and I think that the Senate seat that Spartz is currently sitting in, or sorry, rep seat that she's sitting in, is definitely at risk. I think she could be. I mean, she barely gets through her own primary this time around. She's not a true MAGA Trump supporter, but she's also not the prototypical conservative. So I think she's very weak in that race. I think that the 21 race where Buck has lost to Tracy Powell, he has a formidable opponent facing him.
Kirsten Root, friend of the pod.
Yeah. So she has a real possibility there. A lot of this is going to be exacerbated by the lack of strong local journalism in those communities in which these candidates are running. If there's no platform for me to reach the people, then how do I get them to know who I am, what I stand for, and why they should vote for me? Obviously, the online experience is where you're going to have to reach most of those voters, as print newspapers are small and dying, with the exception of your major urban centers. So radio doesn't work like it used to terrestrially. So you've got to find new ways to reach these voters. And the Democrats to date have shown some proficiency in this. So I hold some real hope out for the Democrat Party statewide and locally that they can find those avenues. They can get their word out there. Obviously, the Kokomo Lantern, I willingly print both sides as an impartial news outlet. So it encouraged both parties at the local level. News impacting are much more important ones upstream because they have most influence in. So some of these races, if Democrats can, will generate enough interest, start seeing change at the local level. See that say. So some real possibility, but I think Republicans are still hold a clear majority. Probably won't move more seats at most, but I'm really hopeful that some of these local races across the state flip.
Yeah, and you mentioned the congressional races, and I guess we should mention those on the Republican side. Now, there weren't any upsets, technically, as it were. You mentioned Victoria Spartz in the 5th district. Also, excuse me. Also, Jefferson Shreve down in the 6th. I'm sorry, one moment.
Take a sec.
Very good. Much better. Also, so in addition to Victoria Spartz, Jefferson Shreve down in the 6th district also had a remarkably close primary with a relative unknown challenger. Now, both Shreve and Spartz did wind up coming through, as did 80-year-old incumbent Jim Baird, back at it, who beat sitting state rep Craig Haggard pretty comfortably in the 4th district there. In the 2nd and the 3rd and the 8th, the Republican incumbents there, Rudy Yakim, Marlon Stutzman, and Mark Messmer, were unchallenged in their primaries, and the Republicans nominated to take on the Democratic incumbents in the only 2 blue seats in Indiana, Republican Porter County Commissioner. Oh my God, I didn't put her name in this thing. I'm sorry. It is, I missed it. Anyway, a Republican Porter County commissioner will run against Frank Mervan up in the 1st, and in Indianapolis, Patrick McCauley will take on Andre Carson in the 7th. Amy, besides, I guess, you know what? Before we get there, let's talk about the Democrats and their congressional nominees, and then we'll sort of deal with the congressional races as a whole and maybe preview them for November a little bit. So on the Democratic side, in the congressional races, like we said Mervan and Carson, they did have challengers, won very handily in their races. Up in the 2nd and down in the 8th, establishment favorites Jamie Decio and Mary Allen won their primaries handily. In the 6th district, Cindy Worth will be the Democratic nominee for the 3rd time in a row. She won comfortably in a race that got kind of testy there toward the end. Down here in my neck of the woods, Brad Meyer won the 9th district primary running as an unapologetic progressive. Same thing in the 4th. Drew Cox won a crowded race as a unapologetic progressive. But I think the one that Indiana Democrats are eyeballing the most going into November as a potential pickup opportunity is Victoria Sparks' 5th district seat, where incumbent state senator J.D. Ford won a crowded race, a 7-candidate field there. Ford picked up more than 40% of the vote, defeating friend of the pod, Jackson Franklin, relatively comfortably. This race wasn't particularly close, which disappointed some progressives, and a few people over here on our side are not happy about it. I think they'll come home in the long run, but despite Republicans holding a clear structural advantage there in the 5th, Amy, does J.D. Ford really have a chance to knock off Victoria Sparks there in November?
Yes. I certainly hope so. I would certainly like to see that. I think it will be interesting. You're completely right. It was not close. He won that handily. He's obviously has the name recognition. He's been a sitting state senator. He's got legislative experience, which Jackson did not have. It'll be interesting to see if some of the momentum that Jackson's campaign had. I mean, they did come in 2nd, and some of the there were a lot of newer voters in that campaign, and there was a lot of kind of people, grassroots effort and energy there. It would be great to see Senator Ford come out with, policies that would maybe bring everyone along. And so I think kind of waiting to see what his platform is exactly going to look like and what that strategy is going to be against Sparks. But I think there's certainly a chance, but I don't think we can take it for granted. It's going to take quite the ground game. And again, it's not going to be one with money. It's going to be one, the more people we can organize on the ground there. So it's definitely a race to watch, but the math isn't in our favor.
Certainly not. And to your point, it is going to take that grassroots energy, and I think there is a lot of that in the 5th. It was in many ways within Jackson's campaign. I think those folks still want to do the work. I think Senator Ford can invite them in. The bar to clear is pretty low. The progressive base isn't asking a whole lot of Senator Ford, in my opinion. We'll see how that goes. Pat, do any other of those congressional races catch your eye? What about the 7th? Andre Carson, won 60% of the vote. It wasn't terribly close. Destiny Wells did have name recognition as a statewide candidate the last 2 cycles. That is a majority minority district, though, and I think that definitely played a part in wanting to keep Carson there. Obviously, the name recognition, his grandmother's history in that seat, and on and on. Did the margin surprise you? Did any of the other congressional races stand out on the Democratic side?
Really, no. I thought that when we came to the federal elections, those played out pretty much how I thought they would. I thought that Sparks had an outside chance of losing hers, but she did squeak by there. But there was one election that I found extremely interesting that we haven't talked about yet, and that is delegates to the Secretary of State's nomination for the Republican Party. our own Secretary of State, Diego Morales, did not win a race to become a delegate to vote on his own candidacy. That should tell you that they are awash with problems at that office. And I think Bo Bai, I've met him a couple times. He seems like a nice kid. He's formally educated. He has a great pedigree. Will most likely steamroll Diego if he gets the nomination, or whoever the player to be named later is. I think that Bai has to be the prohibitive favorite for that race. I mean, Diego can't even vote for himself.
Well, let's not go coronating Prince Beau just yet. He's got a contested he's got a contested convention in his own right. And listen, Diego might not make it out of his convention, and it seems Beau's entire platform is, hey, we got to get rid of Diego. The Republicans might do the job for him first. I want to move on to some other down ballot races on the Democratic side. Not a lot of surprises here at the state Senate level. You mentioned in your area there, Pat, Kirsten Root won the 21st, the primary there, fairly handily. Up in the Fort Wayne area, Julie McGill defeated Chloe Andis in the 15th. Tammy Dixon Tatum in the 25th won her primary, and in the Lafayette area, Natasha Baker won in the 22nd. Moving into the Indianapolis area, a few contested primaries there in state Senate district. IPS school board member Alyssa Impink defeating Cliff Marsiglio in state Senate District 46. Christina Moorhead defeating a few candidates in the 29th, and in Senate District 31, that is Fishers and part of Marion County, current outgoing term-limited Marion County Sheriff Kerry Forrestal won that race and will face Juanita Albright in November. Amy, those Indianapolis races, anything out, that's your area, that's your neck of woods, does anything stand out there? We talked about this on election night. I was kind of surprised that Ms. Moorhead won so handily in the 29th. That district has a large minority population, and I think maybe Pastor Green and Mr. Hicks split the black vote there. Did I read that correctly?
That was my thought, but it's hard with these primaries. It's not like we have good like polling or something like going into it. So it's kind of like, well, I don't know. We feel good. We've had some good conversations. You don't know what you're going to get depending on, what voters actually show up. So, I think, I don't know that I have anything, any particular insights there, but I'm ready to talk about the Marion County clerk's race.
Oh, we're going to come to that in just a second.
I'm like, that's the one I want to talk about.
Yeah, and I should let me get a couple more notes on the record. At the state house level on the Democratic side, no major surprises. Lauren Cole defeated Joel Levi in House District 37 in a primary there. A bit surprising. Levi was a state Senate candidate there 2 years ago, so probably had some more name recognition. And in House District 29 in Hamilton County, Devin Wellington, also a friend of the pod, one of your Mad Voters colleagues there, Amy, your education policy expert, defeated Kumba Kebe. And down on the Ohio River in House District 72, the progressive Michelle Henry topped the business Democrat Corey Cochran down there in House District 72. Pat, I don't know. Anything stand out there? I don't know how much you're paying attention to like these state house races outside of the Kokomo area, but I don't know. Do any of these Democrats jump out to you as people that could potentially pick off some of these Republican districts?
I think that it's great that we have candidates in all these races, period. I don't keep track of things that are going on outside of my region too much. 65 hours a week just covering that is plenty. But I'm heartened by the fact that we do have a slate of strong candidates from north to south. I was at the IDEA conference last year. I'd been at past conferences where it was a lot more subdued, we'll say, than last year's conference. There was a lot of optimism there. There was a lot of information shared. I felt like there was a lot of good groundwork being laid last August for what we're seeing right now. And I think that's going to continue. I'm looking forward to going to IDEA again this summer. And I think we have a real chance of grabbing some of these seats as long as we can get the message out. We make it simple and plainly understood that this is the other choice. These are the choices that bring us back from the brink. These are the things that restore a little bit of sanity in your local budgets. This is the kind of movement that you need if you want just things to calm down for a change. So I think we can position ourselves as a viable alternative to the chaos that has reigned not only in the state but this nation.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that'll be very important, and I say this all the time, now it might be more important at the national level than the state level. And, certainly there's qualifiers. We might not, we can only do so much from a minority position, even if we win many of these seats. There has to be a concrete, we will do this if we win, if you give us power. It can't just be, these guys are bad, these guys are chaotic. That
right.
is true. But there has to be something meatier on the bone, I think, there. Amy, let's do this thing. Let's talk about the local races. There were a few, we were obviously paying attention to those Republican Senate races a lot on Tuesday night. The congressional races, certainly, the contested Democratic primaries, certainly as well. But there were a handful of local races that we were really keeping an eye on, and a couple sheriff's offices. Number one, I guess let me mention those and get them out of the way before I come back to you to one you really want to talk about. Down in Clark County, their incumbent sheriff, a Republican, Scotty Maples, lost his primary to former Jeffersonville Police Chief Kenny Kavanaugh. He will face another Jeffersonville Police Chief, Tim Dieringer, in the campaign in November. Not John Dillinger, not Rick Derringer, Tim Dieringer. Couple cultural references for you young kids from the 1970s there. Lake County up there, another contested six-way Democratic primary. Jerry Williams, Indiana State Police major, won there with 26% of the vote. That one got testy toward the end. The second place finisher, Stephen Flores, was sort of 2 degrees separated from that mob gambling raid that took place up in Lake County last week. In Marion County, your neck of the woods there, Amy, Kelvis Williams won the Democratic primary for Marion County Sheriff. In both of those two races, the Democratic primary winner is your presumptive winner for November. There are, in Lake County, there is a Republican nominee. Democrats win that race every time. And in Marion County, there is no Republican who has yet filed to run for sheriff there. But the race we really want to talk about is sort of the proxy fight in Marion County, where the Democratic Party is a damn mess and it affects Democrats in the entire state. Because of it, the clerk, Kate Sweeney Bell, the incumbent there, won over the progressive darling Carla Lopez Owens, who was just with us recently on the Who's Left podcast and will be a guest on this very show next Sunday. By the record, tune in 10:30 next Sunday. Sweeney Bell won by about 2,100 votes in a relatively close race, while a third place finisher, Bobby Kern, picked up 4,500 votes. Kern passed away in April 3rd, and if he had not been in this race, if folks had known, maybe it had been better publicized that he had passed. Though, I hate to minimize, this is a person's life we're talking about, and I don't want to put it in electoral terms, but Marion County has more folks in it than any single congressional district in this state. This office represents some 900,000+ Hoosiers, whereas any congressperson only represents about 750,000. So this is a big deal. And Sweeney Bell won by a smaller margin than the dead man garnered. Amy, thoughts?
Well, I think the most interesting data point here is that more people voted against the incumbent, Kate Sweeney Bell. So the majority wanted someone other than the incumbent. And I am very interested, those 4,500 voters for the dead guy. Some people were speculating like, oh, maybe people thought it was funny, or I don't know. No, I think we have a major uninformed voter problem. And, I work the polls, I see it. I talked to some people who were standing outside, passing out their candidates' materials. And a couple of them were like, I used to think that this was a waste of time because surely people already have their minds made up when they're going to the polls. But they're like, no, actually, I know that I swayed some people on their way in. And to me, it also points to the reason the Secretary of State's race is so important, because I know this is something that's hard for us to imagine here in, red Indiana, but in other states, they will actually send out a voter guide. So you don't have to try to figure out who the heck are these people on my ballot and which races are on there. You actually get, here are the candidates and information about them, and to help you make that decision. And I know that that's something that Blythe Potter has been advocating as something that she would do as Secretary of State. And, I think that would go a long way. At Mad Voters, we try to put out as much as we can. We can't cover every race in the state, so we tend to focus on state house. So clerk wasn't, county clerk isn't one that we're able to cover. But to me, I think this shows just we have a lot of uninformed voters. And so it's great that they're taking the effort and they're showing up. But if they're not really informed, and if we're not having those conversations, I think this was an incredible showing by Carla Lopez Owens. And I think it really shows what a grassroots campaign is able to do. And so, to me, man, it was close, and you really hate to see the impact that, the current voters had. And, we'll never know where those votes may have went. But like I said at the top, more people voted against the incumbent than for her. And so, to me, that's a win. Carla ran an incredible race. And, it's exciting to see contested races in the primary. So I'm all for it.
Amy, I don't want to sound conspiratorial because I generally reject conspiracy theories, but I don't know, wouldn't it be the county clerk's job to sort of publicize this information that there had maybe been a change in the ballot that, obviously, listen, Mr. Kern passed away after the ballots had been finalized, but couldn't the county clerk have put out that information so voters in Marion County would have known that? And was it perhaps in Ms. Sweeney Bell's benefit to not say anything?
Yeah, that's a great question. I will say that it was April 3rd that he passed away. It was beyond the point, where the ballots already been finalized. The absentee ballots had already started to go out. It legitimately was beyond the point. But you're right, there could have been more, education and information going out about that.
You can put a social media post, I mean,
yeah, something. Yeah. But, man, we've got our work to do to educate voters and make sure that they are not just showing up to the polls, but they're showing up informed, and they are voting, in their best interests.
Pat, final word on the primaries Tuesday night before we turn and take care of the leftover stories from Indiana this week that I wanted to make sure we got to.
Sure. I think that overall, this was a win for two organizations. One, it was a win for the Trump movement. Obviously, we saw his impact given enough money that he can buy just about any race he wants to buy. So it's a big up for him. It's a big down for the rest of us. But I also think that what we saw was, amazingly contested races up and down the ballot on the Democrat ticket. This was and I hate to say this was the first time that I had pulled a Democrat ballot in the primary in my professional career. Because in Howard County, there's almost never a Democrat primary race. And if there is, there are always 3 or 4 on the Republican ticket that end up being more concerning. And so I was pulling a Republican ballot, though I consider myself a moderate, more to avoid the worst choice. Is like picking your favorite tumor over there. So I picked the one that won't kill me. It'll just make me go through chemo, So I got to pull a Democrat ballot for the first time, and I got to vote in contested Democratic races, and that was a new experience for me in Howard County. And I was very pleased, very optimistic about the direction in which the Democrat Party is going, and I think those results bore out across the state.
I think so as well, and we're going to be on top of this from now until November, covering that here, talking to as many of the candidates as we can, certainly between me and our other fine affiliates here at the Progressive Indiana Network. So, a few other things, the news does not stop for election week. And there were a few other stories, I guess I wanted to make sure we talked about before we have to wrap up today. So, this is from the Indiana Capitol Chronicle. Public school groups are expected to record a record number of school referendums this November. Up to 100 Indiana school districts may ask voters for new property tax revenue. This is because last year's Senate Enrolled Act 1 property tax, quote-unquote, reforms, which the Indiana Coalition for Public Education estimates will cost public schools $744 million through 2028. Districts that don't go to voters this fall can't try again until November of 2028. Per pupil public school funding has effectively dropped 7% since 2010 when adjusted for inflation. What's driving that? Well, the increasing diversion of funding to vouchers, charter schools, and education savings account. While public schools got only a 2% increase in last year's budget, and I'm no economist, but that I do not think is keeping up with the pace of inflation. Amy, a quick word on the schools.
Yeah, it's another opportunity to educate voters and make sure they understand the reasons that this is happening. So you did a good job of explaining that. These are self-inflicted wounds, right? Like we are not funding our public schools to the level that we need. We are just siphoning money away from them. And it's disgraceful, but it is part of the plan. An uneducated electorate, is an authoritarian's dream. And, I hope that that these schools that are having the referendum on the ballot are able to get them passed so that they're able to get a little bit more funding. But, this is another example where who we're voting for, who we're electing into the General Assembly has an impact on our lives. And, Braun may have ran on lowering property taxes and it may have sounded good, but it doesn't actually help any of us in the long run. It's going to end up costing the average taxpayer a lot more. And so, yeah, it's a shame, but it's completely self-inflicted.
Let's talk about Mike Braun and short-term decisions that sound good but might bite you in the ass in the long term. This week, the governor added an Indiana gas tax suspension on top of the sales tax break. Again, the Indiana Capitol Chronicle. Governor Braun extended the state's gasoline sales tax suspension another 30 days and added the 36-cent excise tax, remove that, at least for the next 30 days. Again, this will save Hoosiers nearly 60 cents per gallon at the pump. for the next month. In April, Braun told reporters he lacked the legal authority to suspend the excise tax without legislative approval. Well, apparently he got some new advice there. The combined 30-day suspensions will cost state coffers $104 million and local units $52 million. However, the state is still $425 million above fiscal year projections. Average Indiana gas prices rose from $4.14 in April to $4.76 this week, up from $2.70 before the war in Iran began. Attorney General Todd Rokita has opened price gouging investigations and sent warning letters after receiving 150 plus complaints. Gas buddy analyst Patrick DeHaan calls it a, quote, perfect storm. Again, that's the Iran-Hormuz blockade. Plus, the BP refinery up in Whiting has also been out of commission, or at least was briefly out of commission there, affecting gas refining capacity in the state, too. Patrick, now listen, we all like to save money at the pump. Maybe the state's coffers can keep up with this. I don't know how long he can keep doing this. Our roads are already in pretty bad shape, though. I mean, if you're not, this gas tax money is supposed to pay for repairs to our roads and bridges. If you go without it, you might wind up paying more in maintenance on the back end after a pothole in Indianapolis swallows your vehicle.
Yeah, so this is performative, and it's not the first time the state's gone through something like this. I can remember back in 2000 or 1999 when Governor O'Bannon suspended the gas tax for a period of time because we'd reached $1.80 per gallon, and that was just unpalatable. Yeah, exactly. So it didn't move the needle economically for people's household budgets then. It's not going to do it now. This is really just trying to placate a very angry electorate who has any number of reasons to really dislike the Brown administration. So this is nothing more than a distraction that gets him a little breathing room. And yeah, local government is going to get hurt worse than anyone else. You see that $52 million number that local units of government are going to be missing out on. I can tell you that is a vital pot of money that we really shouldn't be touching right now. Kokomo doesn't have the best streets, but I would guess that we are probably not that much different than every other Hoosier town and city out there. We're all struggling with that. I know up in Galveston, which is just about 5 minutes or 10 minutes north of Kokomo, there's a bridge that's been out under repair for more than a year on State Road 35, and there's no projected time when that'll reopen. There are some structural problems there, but there's also a funding problem there. So let's take more money away from that. How about that? That should fix it even quicker, I think. So not overly impressed with this. Gouging, we saw gouging, 30 minutes after the airplane strikes at 9/11. That does happen, and if it's happening, I hate to say it, I hope Rokita finds them and gets them. Otherwise, I hope that Rokita finds something other than being the AG. That would be great. I do want to go back, though, real quick to the education thing before we move on. And, we're talking about all these referenda that are going to hit the ballots. Unfortunately, the canary died in that coal mine 2 years ago. Kokomo schools tried the same thing in the 24 election, and it lost by a 3-1 margin and came with a lot of angry voters that were threatening violence by the time it was all over with. It was vehemently turned down. I don't think that the voters who now are experiencing ridiculous gas prices and inflation out of control are going to say, yes, please take more money from me. So the schools that are being choked out, we want to pay for play education system here, because if I can keep you ignorant, angry, and afraid, I can control you. There's no way that the state's going to change its position on education when it comes to the public sector. This will only get worse, and the referenda will only demonize those school systems that are slowly dying.
Yeah. Well, hey, speaking of public forums where the folks were not happy about it, a couple of them in different places this week in the state about the same topic, data centers again. So in Indianapolis, the city county council approved California-based Metroblock's rezoning request to build a data center on a 14-acre former drive-in theater in the historically black Martindale-Brightwood neighborhood. Residents have opposed this project for months, citing the neighborhood's legacy of lead contamination from decades of industrial use and fears of additional noise, water, and power burdens. Councilor Jesse Brown, who doesn't represent that district, Ron Gibson represents that district, district. Well, Brown tried to pull the vote for a public hearing, but lacked the authority because that's not his district. He separately introduced a non-binding resolution urging a temporary stay on high-impact data center approvals. That passed, but again, I need to stress, it is non-binding. Indiana's 2019 tax abatement for data centers have made the state a magnet for the industry, driving rapid expansion across multiple neighborhoods and townships simultaneously. And up in Hobart in Northwest Indiana, officials there this week okayed an Amazon data center plan in a tense meeting with residents. The plan commission voted 8-0 to approve 2 site plans totaling 750 plus acres for Amazon's data center project after a nearly 5-hour meeting. Standing room only crowd was overwhelmingly opposed. Again, residents cited the health risks, noise, property values, and environmental impacts in what they called a, quote, sacrifice zone. The only speakers in favor of it were a NIPSCO employee, that's the utility up there, and a regional economic development official, both of whom were jeered by the crowd. Only a couple minutes left here, so quick comments. Patrick, they trying this in Kokomo yet?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we spent 6 weeks in March and April with this same thing with an industrial park. So 700 acres were rezoned for heavy industrial and then annexed into the city. That was finalized at the beginning of April with standing room only crowds and protests all about because they're convinced that there is a data center in the works. Public officials are denying any knowledge of it. I have inside information that it is indeed a data center that is being planned. These crowds weren't going in just blindly assuming. There is one in the works. It just hasn't been presented yet, which allows our mayor and our city council to continue to plead ignorance when they are anything but on this issue. It's going to come to a head pretty soon. Our Howard County commissioners are prepared with a 6-month moratorium on data centers, battery energy storage facilities, and possibly even nuclear facilities that should come up for a vote here before the end of the month, I believe. We have one commissioner who is very strongly in favor of that, and the other two have gone along with, hey, this isn't the best idea for Howard County. That won't affect Kokomo, however. So we do have a subcommittee that's trying to be formed. We had a month ago, we had 5 city council members say that they were interested in examining the idea of a moratorium. That got the 4 councilmen who are very strongly in favor of whatever the mayor likes, more than a little concerned, and that involves the president and the vice president of that council. So all of a sudden, our first meeting of May was canceled for lack of an agenda, so that a resolution promoting a moratorium could not be presented. However, there is a member of our local plan commission who intends to introduce it at the end of this month so that it will have to get a recommendation to be passed on to the council. So they really can't avoid the vote. We're going to get a data center. Unfortunately, the Republican leadership, the mayor and the council are going to vote for that when it comes up. It may go as hard as an 8-1 vote in favor of it by the time it's done, because I don't have confidence that those members of the council who have expressed some skepticism about data centers will be able to withstand the political pressure that will come from their side, even with an election coming next year. So, yeah, we're in the middle of that fight, and I don't think that we're going to win it.
Sadly, Amy, this is like the thing that unites Hoosiers across the board, across the political spectrum. Nobody wants one of these things, yet they're going up everywhere very quickly.
I'll just put in a plug. Thank God for Jesse Brown, the people's counselor, right? Trying to give a voice to the Martindale Brightwood neighborhood when their own counselor wouldn't listen to them. I'll just go ahead and put in a plug that we will be having municipal elections here in Indy, or across the state in 2027, and Mr. Gibson already has Belinda Drake has announced that she will be running to primary him, and so looking forward to those races already next year. Yeah, at the end of the day, like, the people need a voice. And when we're talking about like Martindale Brightwood, my God, we're back to the conversation from the beginning and the VRA and the racism that's just baked into this country. I mean, the community deserved to have a voice, and they just didn't. And it's a shame. And so thank God we have people like Jesse who are fighting the good fight, and trying to give a voice to people.
And this way we should note, this is a Democratic Indianapolis City Council with Democrats like those who needs Republicans. So finally this week, Micah Beckwith, always good for a punchline. The Lieutenant Governor was on the Kuiper Files, a far right-wing Christian nationalist podcast, lamenting the Indiana legislature's narrow rejection of the firing squad execution earlier this year. He argued capital punishment is biblically mandated, citing Romans 13, and that opposing it means being, quote, more virtuous than Christ. He called execution a blessing for death row inmates because it gives them the chance to be in the presence of Jesus. He noted that lethal injection is expensive and a firing squad only costs a couple bucks. He somehow, and this just boggles the mind, framed non-execution as anti-life, arguing that without it, evildoers basically run amok. And I will close with this. If execution is a blessing, Micah, be blessed. That's it for this week. Where can the folks find you? Amy, first.
Madvoters.org. We will be, now that the primary's over, we will be launching our full voter guide and our endorsements, which we call Mad Voters Verified Politicians, or MVPs. And of course, you can follow us at Mad Voters on all the socials except for the bad place. We left that a while ago.
Yes. There's many of the bad place at this point. TikTok's becoming the bad place. Yeah. Facebook is a bad place.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Twitter was the one I was talking about, or X, or whatever we're supposed to call it. But yeah, we're on the rest of them. They're not necessarily good places, but we're still
very
there.
Good. Pat, where can the folks find you on social media, and how can they support the Kokomo Lantern?
Absolutely. So Kokomo Lantern has a Facebook page and the site, or group. So go to Facebook, look for Kokomo Lantern. That's the easiest way to find me, and that will get you links to my Substack, kokomolantern.substack.com. It is where I put out all of my stuff first, so you can subscribe for free or paid. I have a paid option if you want to get to my archive, but that will get you an email every time that I post content, so you won't have to go searching for it. That's probably the easiest way to do that. I also have the website, kokomolantern.com, where most of that stuff will appear as well. So really, if you want the full experience, check out all three. Make sure to send me what you want in the paper, because this really is a community project. You can reach me at 765-210-3442 or kokomolantern@gmail.com. I'll be happy to receive your information, your criticism, your praise, your money, whatever you like. I'm here for you.
Very good. Patrick, thank you. You, unlike Micah Beckwith, are actually out there doing the Lord's work. Of course, you can find me, folks, on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Threads at whosleft.us, and on Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube at Who's Left. Send me a DM anywhere with feedback. I am on tonight over on Tracy Carson's YouTube channel at 7 p.m. We will also be discussing the election results from Tuesday. I'm back this coming Tuesday, speaking with Indianapolis activist and community organizer Samantha Douglas. We're going to talk more about what happened in Marion County this past week, as well as how that relates to the Voting Rights Act. It's all connected. Wednesday, Hold 'em Accountable with Derek Holder. Thursday, the Concerned Clergy podcast drops first thing in the morning. Saturday, the Recovered Republican with Brianna Newhart every Saturday on Progressive Indiana Network. Please help the network grow with a follow at the full spelled out name on most social media sites, but on Blue Sky and TikTok, it's PIN Indiana. Again, follow us wherever you're at. Once again, thank you to Amy Courtney and Pat Munsey for joining me today. Help their organizations where you can, like, subscribe, share, all the good stuff. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you for being with me here on this Sunday morning. Let's keep building a radically democratic Indiana together. Until next time, I am Scott Aaron Rogers. Love each other, Indiana.